Rob Grimes with the IFBTA, and I'm really pleased, again, to be with Hughes, which is a founding global industry partner of the IFBTA. And with me today is Tim Tang, who's a business technologist, and Carl Udler, the Senior Director of Marketing. So welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So very specifically, then, Tim, from what you see out there, cybersecurity, it's interesting that, that's a term that's thrown out there a lot. Data security is used out there. People are afraid, because there's so much data out there, but they don't understand it. And I'm not so sure, by the way, in our industry, we have to explain every bit and bite of it and how it is. But how do you see, the nuances of cybersecurity? What is it that you feel that, the food and beverage industry, the retail industry, as they sort of cross paths here, what are they either focusing on or not focusing on, and then how is Hughes coming to play in that?
I think you've characterized it pretty well. If you were to put your finger on where is the problem here, cybersecurity is a very technical topic. I guess first of all is that it's a very meaningful business priority, right? A ransomware attack could be the end of your business. A typical ransomware is clocking in right now on average around $4.5 million. How many businesses can afford that kind of ransom and do those kinds of payouts? The dilemma and the difficulty, though, is that so it's a meaningful business priority, but it's also a very kind of technical in nature. And because of that, particularly in the restaurant industry, where you have a lot of emerging brands that don't have the luxury of a dedicated IT staff, the big challenge and the big question here now is, how do I competently address a meaningful challenge to my business on something that I don't have firsthand
Do you think that the
competencies?
restaurant industry actually understands the threat to them in this area?
No, I don't.
Well, I think
in
you
this
start
case-
there, don't you?
I think part of it is communication. Part of it's an awareness of the understanding. And I think what's changing is that these ransomware attacks are becoming so frequent. Quite frankly, I think it's the firsthand experiences with the ransomware attacks that is driving knowledge and awareness of this throughout the industry. They're seeing their competitors, they're seeing their fellow franchisees get hit with these ransomware
Well, the
attacks.
hospitality industry is a main target because everybody knows the names and they're global. And I think also, to Carl's point earlier, the franchisees, the people at the end, get hit, but the brand takes the hit, right? So how do you actually explain that importance to them?
I think we follow the headlines to some extent. Each time there's a massive breach, it tends to raise awareness. And then I think we capitalize on that in terms of helping the franchisees, saying it's not enough just to be aware that MGM just got hit last week. The question now is, how did they get hit, and what kinds of things should you be doing for your business to provide adequate protections and security? It's a technology question, it's a business question, an operations questions too as well. It's an employee training question. So there are different dimensions. Cybersecurity touches all aspects of the business. And when we think about preparing a business for dealing with the threats that are at large, essentially what we're looking at is you don't want to be caught negligent in this manner. Your customers don't want to see it. The regulators, the credit card companies, when a data breach happens, you want to be able to demonstrate that you've done proper due diligence. You've met the terms of due care. You've done what would be reasonably expected of any kind of business in light of serving of your customers.
But I think that Hughes plays a bigger role than people would understand in that. I think at one point, while we're talking about, by the way, service, offering the service and the backbone, to both the customer, who could be the franchisee, the franchisor, or the guest in there, what we don't realize is that there's this new component to it, because we've taken the guest or the consumer into the game, because we start with, their own ordering. We give them self-service, in some places self-pay. We allow them to connect into the network, which, if I'm getting this right, Hughes is providing that network. Yeah. Hughes is providing that firewall, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're not going to sit out there while you're sitting there educating the operator perhaps about all this. You have this other threat, which is what somebody walks in with and they connect to you. And so how do you deal with that? Because you are controlling both of those pieces.
It's when you look at the nature of the digital experience for the customer, how digitized the restaurant industry has become. It used to be just a matter of credit card transactions. And we had very good solutions for, hey, if the network didn't work, we could do an offline credit card transaction and still keep still keep taking money from our customers. The bulk of the business now, though, is not on premise. It's off premise. while you can do an offline credit card transactions, there's no such thing as an offline mobile order. There's no such thing as an offline ability to take in those
Yeah, the
catering
offline
orders.
mobile order is sending a fax and picking up the phone,
So
right?
the great awareness right now is this, and what I think many restaurants are starting to become aware of, unfortunately the hard way, is that this infrastructure now is becoming a meaningful part of their customer experience. We've essentially taken that internet and basically put it between the cash register and the consumer. And so all those things that you've seen at home where the internet's sometimes slow and the like, it will basically translates into queue lines and basically slower service for your customers and the like. So we think about what is required now for today's restaurant. It's no longer a single cheapy kind of consumer grade internet connection out to the internet. We're talking about an enterprise grade solution.
Well, they want
with
more and more
LTE
bandwidth, right?
Well, one of the common challenges there is that it's not just simply a matter of how much bandwidth, but the quality of that bandwidth.
Absolutely.
So when you think about the issues, there's two common problems. One is an outage. Well, in an outage, you need to be thinking about an LTE backup, a second path into the restaurant if your network goes down. But what's far more common is this challenge of congestion, where it just gets slow. It's still connected, but it's just
And
slow.
there's so many things that people don't think about. I mean, it impacts all of us as travelers, right? And I get so upset. I sit on the plane and I don't get. And by the way, the planes are giving up. They used to tell you no streaming. Oh no, they got streaming now, right? And it's going to get worse, right? But when I go out and any family, and you watch the family out there, the kids are sitting there, if they're little kids, are sitting on their iPads and things, and they're playing games and stuff. Boy, can you imagine not having great connectivity with all of those kids? And we don't even think about those kids sitting there. Forget about the thing about, bring your own device, whatever it is. I don't know that people actually understand how bad it's going to get. And it's not bad, but how much more service we're going to have to provide.
And when you think about some of the trends and where the business is going, we are looking for ways to basically improve operations, leverage automation, leverage voice ordering, and leverage computer vision to improve the operations of the restaurants. These are going to become even more sensitive to the network issues then too as well.
And the security issues behind those are becoming more and more, as you put, it's not just about the data anymore, because that data contains, biometrics and other things as well.
And so when we think about the restaurant industry, it's a question now of being able to kind of address these threats to the business in a reasonable and kind of rational fashion. I think the starting point for many cases is an on-premise security solution. A managed firewall will basically protect the entire restaurant. Actually, maybe I should even take a step back and say it starts with the point of sale. And different point of sale companies will have different solutions.
However you define point of sale, because online ordering is point of sale, but it's not within the unit, as you've already said.
A very fair point. So we'll start with the point of sale, and in many cases, there's usually some kind of P2PE, point-to-point encryption solution that's usually preserving and protecting that ability to take credit card transactions from the road. Then you start asking yourself, what else in the restaurant needs to be protected? The very next vulnerability is that store manager PC, and being able to basically protect that from ransomware. Store manager loses their PC, they lose their ability to do the inventory, their employee management, all access to their employee data and the like. This is a very key element of their business operations. And so thinking about endpoint protections and managed detection and response, MDR solutions, protecting that endpoint, that store manager PC from ransomware and zero-day types attacks. You can step back and think protecting the whole store with an on-premise kind of firewall solution. And then even protecting individual access rights with SASE solutions for the general manager and the store managers.
But you see, this whole conversation becomes a very confusing conversation for the normal person. I think that, point of sale itself as a term, POS, means many things to different people. The credit card machine or the candy that's sitting in a grocery store. It's a cash register in a restaurant, right? But what we really are talking about is the point of service or the point of touch point. And however you want to define that, because there are lots of touch points between the guests, the servers, and people outside. But wherever the first point of service is, which could just be looking up something, then turning it into a reservation, then turning it into an order, which is actually all within one. Could be a POS transaction that's there. But what we're really talking about here is a lot of digital stuff, and there's a lot of confusion on digital these days. So how should we define digital as it relates to this industry? we're going to let the marketing guy go ahead and define it first, and then we're going to have our technologist, the business technologist, give us the reality of how it fits.
So let's, Rob, talk about digital media services. Okay, Hughes provides a lot of digital media services to retail, to restaurants, to retail petroleum. And we do that through a number of different ways of configuring a similar like product. So you have traditional digital media, digital signage that you'll see inside of a store, inside of a restaurant, right? It'll be talking about a certain offering they have. It may mimic or mirror some of the marketing that's out in the marketplace so the customer has a consistent look and feel when they come in. And it may be suggesting something that's on the menu as an LTO, limited time offer. Then that morphs into digital menu boards, right? You look up at the menu where you expect it to be, and there are monitors, either horizontal or vertical, and you see all the items that are available, but not just the line item and the price, but also a picture of the item. And it's amazing, speaking with food service companies, how enticing those pictures are and how much they can really make a sale.
It's
convince a
interesting. They
customer.
already have that digital library because they've been doing commercials and things like
exactly
that
right.
out there already. And even if they're small, there's a digital library out there, so they don't realize how much is available to them.
And if you went in looking for a bacon cheeseburger, everyone knows what a bacon cheeseburger looks like.
I assume it's got bacon, cheese, and a burger.
And a burger and a
Not a
bun.
bun, right?
But if there's
But you need the special sauce.
special sauce. But if you also want the avocado bacon cheeseburger, it's helpful to know where the avocado sits in the specific layers. Is it between the cheese and the bacon? Is it between the bacon and the bun? It's important to a lot of people, perhaps. The digital menu boards are also tied into the POS. So we have one customer who tried to do a DIY digital menu board on their own,
Do you just get a monitor and put a stick in it?
or some way of hacking it, yes. And when we engaged with them, they were talking about all the different troubles and problems they had with getting the proper messaging, the proper pricing, the proper pictures out to all their locations, and the time delay it took, and the pricing on the menu board may differ from what's in the POS system. So Hughes came in, worked with this restaurant company, and put in a standard digital signage system at all of their locations. So when they decide to add a menu item or to change
You don't
a
have
price,
to worry about whether it can be supported by the hardware, the software,
that's right.
and the
And whether
network,
you have
right?
whether you have 20 or 200 locations, someone back at a central office can go into our portal, very simple, very easy to use, and very easy to access, make those changes, and then propagate it out to all of the menu boards at the same time, so everything's up to date and consistent across
And I
all
think that word
locations.
consistency, which includes, by the way, the connectivity to the store to be able to do that, because most of it is not managed at the store level. And by the way, again, I would remind the POS may not be managed at the store level either. So it's coming from outside, and with everything else that's coming in, to have that control and consistency, but also to be able to use the data that you're collecting to take action for some of your units who may or may not, be following it, but you have the systems behind it to do it. That connectivity is like the air, in there.
The results for this one customer of ours that did the menu boards was mind-boggling. It cut down so many hours of labor of making sure that the menu boards are right at a specific location. If they weren't, picking up the phone, calling someone at the help desk or at headquarters, and getting it resolved. The ROI was almost instantaneous.
It's out there. So Tim, I think it's at simplest level. I think we all get the idea of digital. We think of digital media. We insert the word media in there, so we get digital menu boards, digital signage. I got that. But isn't there a lot more to the digital experience? Because you used the word experience before, that occurs within a retailer or food service today.
It's a lot of the things that you actually don't see that are actually contributing to that experience. So when you think about like your digital menu board example, and then think about a brand that has gone from 50 to 100 locations, and maybe they have 5 or 10 screens per locations. I mean, you've quickly now you are dealing with a solution where you have an IP-enabled device, 10 of them at 100 locations, 1,000 devices that need to be kept operational. How are you going to maintain that? How are you going to monitor that? How are you going to know when a screen goes down and is no longer presenting the content? How are you going to know when a screen, for whatever reason, didn't get the appropriate pricing packages and now, or the appropriate images, and now is showing defective images on the menu board? And so when we think about technology and that
They
digital
may not
experience,
notice it if they're busy.
you want to be thinking about what does it take. It's a lot of the complexity that, and even the capability of integrating that screen and being able to pull prices from the POS and being able to leverage those APIs and the like. So when you think about the experience, it's one thing to have a beautiful screen. It's all the other things of how do I feed the screen? How do I feed the appropriate content into the screen? And how do I make sure that it continues to operate and
Right.
run? I think when we think about when we go one step further, then we start thinking about the idea of how do I improve that customer experience. You know, it's shocking in the QSR industry. One of I think the main problems from a customer experience perspective is this idea of menu anxiety. Customer comes up to the cash register, they've got to pick, you know, what is it that they
There's a
want to
lot of
order,
choices,
and there's
right?
all these choices up in front of them, and they're just like, I'll just have what I had last time and order the same thing over and over. But that doesn't give you the full
Right.
brand experience and the like. And so now it begs the question of what's the right way to reformat that and lay out that menu so that I'm optimizing my opportunity with the different customer bases based on their time of day, based on their region, based on their demographics and the like.
And based on what exactly they're doing or where they're connecting, because in reality, that digital experience, let's put aside online ordering, but in a drive-through, you have different drive-through boards and order confirmation boards. And if you go look at some of the full-service restaurants, they've got, you know, basically kiosks on the table, right? You know, from some of the devices for games, ordering, and things like that. So really, what you're looking at here in the word digital, which is why I say this, is we can't just be thinking about traditionally digital media being a menu board or, you know, digital signage. It's actually that media is in a number of different places.
I think what's important to understand is just the market environment that we're in. We're in a very high inflationary environment, and while it's great that so many restaurants are recovering and in terms of their sales are going up, what's also important to understand is that their costs are going up. And so a lot of the growth that so many restaurants are experiencing today is actually profit-less revenue growth. So even though the revenues week over week, month over month are going up, because their costs are going up, their profitability is actually going down.
Well-
and that basically creates a situation where you have a very narrow margin now in terms of how do I operate and maximize the potential business of my restaurant. And that means now that I need to be much smarter about how I present my products to my restaurant, to my customer when they come in, and giving them a greater experience, a greater
But somewhere
ability
in
to
there,
understand.
somewhere in that complexity and all those pieces, I think you're right, because a lot of the services that are sold today to restaurants and individual applications are software as a service, even hardware as a service in there. Well, I think that this sounds like the role that Hughes plays in this, because as a consolidator and managing them in, first of all, if you're a smaller operator or franchisee, you have the scale on your side that they may not have to bring in lower costs for all of these individual services that are being sold to them on a monthly basis, but perhaps in a consolidated lower fee, hence managed service or shared service, right?
Every time you add another vendor, you're adding more operational costs, you're making more overhead management costs and the like. Instead of having 5 vendors do 5 things, get one vendor to basically provide a portfolio of services. Get one vendor to provide your provision, your broadband, your cable and your LTE backup. Get one vendor to provide your managed firewall services. Get one vendor to provide your
And they
Wi-Fi
don't really need to worry
capabilities.
about all these details. They should
And-
have one person who's going to do it for them.
Your Wi-Fi, your voice over IP, your digital menu board. By having one vendor supply all this, not only are they giving you the efficiencies of being able to provide multiple services to you, same call center, same technicians, same installers and the like, they're also getting a much deeper understanding of your business from all these different aspects in terms of and understanding. And it basically sets them up to be a far better business
Right.
partner now.
But by the way, oh, go ahead.
And all this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation. There are 3 key areas that Hughes supports. Number 1, connectivity. Number 2, security or services. And number 3, support. And you've seen that during this entire conversation, including the deep dive that Tim did into each of the flavors of it.
From the IFBTA standpoint, it's been a pleasure to again, have Hughes, our founding global industry partner, join us today and share their views in a number of different areas and making sure that we understand not only where they've been and where they are, but also where they're going. And thank you to Tim Tang, the business technologist, I should say Mensa business technologist, and Carl Udler, the Senior Director of Marketing, for joining us today and supporting the IFBTA.
Thank you, Rob.